Since warning you all a few weeks back of the dangers posed by One Piece, I've officially reached the terminal stages of my own battle with the series. I'm out, stuck waiting week after interminable week for our Lord and hookup Oda to bless us with 17 more pages of addictive scripture. And in the 6 to 13 days of agony between, I find myself constantly craving the immersive world building, the gorgeous art, and the sense of adventure and camaraderie to which no other work of fiction compares. I've tried substitutes, believe me, but I know deep down that the only real cure for my One Piece disease is more One Piece, which is why I've been playing the anime's openings on repeat, just cramming as many of their condensed, high-quality Straw Hat vibes as I possibly can directly into all my face holes. But you know me, I can never just vibe with a good OP. I've got to analyze, categorize, and rank them based on visuals over music, which is a thing that I have done and shall now present to you, my fellow Terminal One Piece patients, as yet more content to temporarily fill the gaping, impatient voids in all of your hearts. Now, if you're not yet caught up, don't worry too much about spoilers. I'll try to keep them light beyond what the OPs themselves explicitly show, which isn't much in most of them, and for the ones that do reveal a lot of long con plot points, I'll throw little warnings on screen before they play so you can skip them using the chapters. Before we get into that, though, you'll want to know this video is sponsored by Genshin Impact, a stunningly beautiful, cross-platform co-opable, free-climbing, free-gliding, free-to-play open-world action RPG that's set to satisfy your very specific cravings for high seas, high fantasy adventure with its 1.6 update. For a limited time, there's a whole new map full of islands to explore, with new weapons to find, new monsters to fight, and a whole new Midsummer Island Adventure where you get to help Kaze solve her troubles with the Dodo King. Which also means that during the event, from June 9th to 29th, everyone's favorite Bomb Chuckin' Babby is back in Wish rotation. In keeping with the vacation vibes, this update also adds outfits to the game in the form of summer wear for both Barbara and Jean, who's finally taken off her iconic dandelion tights to let the sea breeze kiss the equally iconic thighs within. During the event, you can buy Jean's new jeanless fit for a discounted $13.50 Genesis crystals, and get Summertime Sparkle Barbara totally free if you can collect enough Echoing Conchas by the deadline. Or, once it's over, you can buy them for 1,680 crystals each. This event won't last all summer, so use the link in the doobly-doo to get Genshin Impact on your device of choice today. Now, on with the list. First up, in dead last, we've got the second OP, which ranks so low for what I believe to be obvious reasons. Yes, the song itself, believed by Folder 5, is a heck of a drift racing track, but besides featuring the first ever Straw Hats beach running shot, which is also the first animated version of one of Oda's color spreads, plus a gag in the middle where the merry-go falls off a waterfall, then turns around in reference to the iconic opening of Madhouse's Treasure Island, its visuals offer absolutely nothing of substance to discuss. After an exceptionally cheap-looking shot of zooming polka dot water, the opening narration is accompanied by a lame digital slideshow of all the characters in East Blue, capping off with a completely static title screen that hangs around for 10 seconds like a stale fart. Then, after it's done reminding me of that much better OP, this one cuts to the Straw Hats doing random fight poses in front of random clips from the show, which goes on for way too long and somehow manages to look like a bad green screen effect. But even after all that, the greatest sin Believe commits is starting the series' long-running bad habit of filling random 5-second gaps in the OPs with totally irrelevant shots of Shanks. Why, look! Here they are again in 24th place, the 4Kids pirate rap, which at least has the excuse of essentially being an AMV. On that note, before you hop down to the comments to rage about the criminally low placement of this classic jam, please remember that I am evaluating these based on their visuals over their music, so while the rap itself is a certifiable gotta catch 'em all timer, I can only ever honestly rank the matching music video above the much worse clip show that the Japanese crew put together. And that won't change no matter how many times per week I personally sing "Yayo, Yayo." I just hope you understand. Oh, and just to head off another line of angry comments, I want to make it super clear that I don't think any of these OPs are bad, except for Believe. But up to the top 20, I don't think they're really good either. All an OP really needs to exceed the pirate rap is a smidge of original Sakuga-dense animated action. And you'll find more than a smidge in Hard Knock Days, which takes 23rd place. However, besides two cool shots introducing Cavendish and Best Boy Bartolomeo, all of that action consists of bog-standard straw hat cliff jumping and shadow boxing on a blank sky background that could be literally anywhere in the Grand Line. Which is a huge letdown since this is the second OP for Dressrosa, and that's a place where there's a massive Roman Colosseum in which a Battle Royale tournament arc is held. The OP does make up for this obvious blunder outside of its action, somewhat, with a fun sequence of the Straw Hats buying supplies in port and then waiting for Sanji to whip up a feast with them. There's a lot going on in the backgrounds of each of these four shots, and every Straw Hat's personality shines through at one point or another. I'm particularly fond of the bit where Usopp chases Zoro down before he can get lost in town, but even with those isolated good bits, the complete package ends up feeling disconnected and fillery. And I'd levy the exact same criticism at the show's 9th OP, Jungle P by 50/50, which in 22nd place features not one, but two context-free action sequences. First, all of the Straw Hats line up and action pose in front of a scrolling map, which is a slightly better generic background than empty sky. Then Luffy fights a marine battleship, which seems to be the One Piece anime crew's default play for filler fights. At the very least, it all animates real fancy-like, and the personality of each crew member is evident in how they move and fight. Especially Brook, to whom this OP serves as our first formal introduction. It also marks the first appearance of Thousand Sunny, so we're given plenty of time to admire some of her cooler new features, including the gown cannon, soldier dock system, and most importantly, the coup de burst, which sends the ship soaring into the moonlight and through the OP's climax. Then we end on this beautifully painted sunrise, which would tie all of that together if time of day was a factor in the rest of the OP. Ultimately, while there's a lot of fun, high-quality animation to be found here, all of it ends up being held back by a general lack of any unifying ideas. One Day, the series' 13th OP, at least brings that much to the table, earning 21st place by focusing on Luffy's separation from his crewmates and his relationship with Ace. It captures these concepts mainly by showing Luffy walking, then running alone through a shattered white wasteland, trying to catch up to his brother's tatted-up back. This is interspersed with shots of the Straw Hats, isolated and working on their own things in the various rooms of Thousand Sunny, as well as shots of every Marineford headliner posing for the camera in the build-up to the big event, or running away from it in Buggy and Mr. Three's case. There's plenty of personality and skill evident in how these cuts are animated, but sadly, all the sad walking and flex posing ultimately combines to create the impression of a disappointingly generic sad OP. One Day feels like far less than the sum of its parts, and that's criminal given how much weight these events and characters carry with them. There's just so much more that could be done with the brotherly feels and Straw Hat separation anxiety that I can't help being let down by it in a major way. On the subject of disappointment, in 20th place we find the OP celebrating OP's 15th anniversary, Wake Up by AAA. which grants each member of the crew a brand new nautically themed outfit just for the occasion. Now, if I ever get around to doing that pirate fashion video, I'll be sure to discuss all of these because they're all great, but for now, I'd just like to call attention to Nico Robin's low-dipping hip skirt, which, when combined with the massive, highly detailed feet she drops on the Marines in her obligatory action pose, creates what might be the single horniest image of her ever, which is saying a lot because this is Nico fucking Robin, son. Beyond that one historically significant detail, there are plenty of fun action shots in this OP, showing off both the Straw Hats' abilities and their fashion ability in a showdown with the Navy admirals. It also kicks off with a cute little scene of Luffy chasing a golden beetle across the Sunny's deck, which highlights prominent elements of the series' comedic, non-combative side, like Sanji arguing with Zoro. Unfortunately, this attempt at a big-picture portrayal of what One Piece is all about also involves interrupting the song with a long, random smack talk session between Luffy and Biggest Bad Blackbeard, which is distracting and poorly written the first time you hear it, and I'd imagine unbearably aggravating by the 80th. 19th place has the exact opposite effect on me. The more times I hear it, the harder it is for me to stop singing, "Yes, we get superpowers." This 21st OP is framed through its intro shot of the Straw Hats leaping into streaks of multicolored light as a send-up of Sentai-style superhero shows. The centerpiece of the sequence is a Sakuga-slathered rendition of Luffy's Mirror World brawl with Charlotte Katakuri, which doesn't actually have much to do with that superhero theme, but is one of the coolest fights in one of the coolest fight locations in the entire series. And given how few of One Piece's best battles are actually represented in these openings, I'm glad that the animators were able to give at least this one the love it deserves. Still, the amount of that fight that's shown is indicative of the general half-assedness with which this OP approaches its theming. Outside of that intro shot and an outro that frames Big Mom and her kids like Power Rangers villains, which is really cool, the only superheroic stuff we actually see here is clips of Sanji's Nazi Power Ranger family transforming. Like, come on, guys, you couldn't even animate the Mugiwara 56 color spread for this? In the end, Superpowers does at least work as a catchy, action-packed intro to the back half of Whole Cake Island, but it could have been so much more, man. Next up, at number 18, we've got OP number 19. We Can, a hyped-up rock number from Kishidan and Hiroshi Kitadani, the raw energy of which comes through beautifully in the animation as Brook jams to it on his rad shark guitar and Luffy, Chopper, and Usopp pump their fists along to the beat. After that fun sequence, the OP moves on to an equally fun sequence of the Straw Hats having a squirt gun fight on the deck of the Sunny, which weaves all of their personalities together into a cute little slice-of-lifey story. Both of these segments feature strong storyboarding and animation and go on long enough to deliver everything their concepts promise, but they don't really connect or build up to the big, dark, dramatic fight with the Animal Kingdom pirates that serves as the OP's climax. And for its part, while that segment does feature some stellar action animation, particularly for Chopper and Brook, it also grossly misrepresents what fighting the Kaido pirates will ultimately be like. On the whole, this OP doesn't really feel like a whole, but rather like the best parts of a few different OPs stitched together. The same goes for 17th place, Share the World by TVXQ, which has a lot of fun matching visuals to that funky, fresh K-pop jam. And even if those visuals don't quite match each other, they do at least flow into each other more smoothly than the last one. From the stylishly black, white, and blue clash with Kuma at the start, to the gown cannon blast that sounds off in the middle, to the Sakuga-tastic impel down fight at the end, the action especially is consistently awesome and perfectly on beat from beginning to end. Most of the bits that aren't action are pretty great too, like the gag where Luffy bails from a surfboard only for the other Devil Fruit dum-dums on the crew to dive in after him. or the Bakano-esque character cards, which are packed with personality. Note how seriously Frankie takes his Speedo shopping, not to mention delicate little details, like Robin saving Luffy from going overboard in the background without looking up from her book. But the best part of these is definitely the text behind each Straw Hat that tries to describe them. He talks a lot. Very noisy man. Good at playing a slingshot. Couldn't have described Usopp better myself. In 16th place, the 4th OP, Bon Voyage by Bon Bon Blanco, is similarly cobbled together in its construction. However, its disparate bits feel far more connected than the last two entries did by virtue of all sharing the same summer vacation-y sort of vibe. We start with shots of some of the Straw Hats' most iconic equipment spread out on a beach. Luffy and Robin's hats, Zoro's sword, Usopp's sniper gear, and Nami's climb attacked and log pose. Then some of Sanji's food is overtaken by a pileup of fun vacation snaps. After the title card, we jump to the Straw Hats walking together in a line, each crewmate joining Luffy in the same order they do in the story, while big, beautiful shots of their faces appear behind the group. The crayon sketchy line art and pastel coloring of these close-ups gives the whole sequence a playful, childish feel, which contrasts neatly with a quick montage of the traumatic childhoods that led to these lives of piracy. Then that's followed by another playful shot of the crew circling the globe in a paper cutout pirate dinghy, again looking like something a kid might have doodled in their notebook. I will admit that the drippy glamour poses at the very end of the OP do feel a bit disconnected from this theme, but even there, the crew is at least wearing summer styles. In a similar vein, 15th place goes to Crazy Rainbow, the 8th OP by Taki and Tsubasa, which feels kinda like a beach party, specifically one where the DJ loves him some ska. It kicks off with a well-considered shot of the sun rising on sandy cliffs and beaches, where the pieces of the title card are scattered, waiting to come together over the breaking dawn. In the new day, the Straw Hats stumble upon this island and get to work shopping and exploring their way through some animated cover pages before setting the table for a beachside dinner that's interrupted by a dinosaur attack. This whole sequence is awash in funny little world-building details, like how Luffy and Chopper stand in a rowboat so that they can bounce beach balls in the surf with Zoro and Usopp, while at the table in the foreground, Robin also keeps her feet up out of the waves. Unfortunately, this well-constructed narrative doesn't quite carry through the whole opening, which fills its obligatory action quota with a random attack from a random pirate ship that Luffy knocks back with some admittedly slick gum-gum moves, and those moves are admittedly perfectly timed to a sick guitar solo. Also, admittedly, the whole fight does at least fit the general fun in the sun aesthetic of the rest of the OP, so I can't really complain about it too much. Aesthetic appeal is also the unifying element of the show's 22nd OP, Over the Top, which takes 14th place by highlighting the shift to a more traditional Japanese ink and watercolor art style that accompanies Luffy's arrival in the traditionally Japanese land of Wano. This new look, coupled with some bouncy animation, adds a lot of freshness to what are otherwise fairly conventional hero poses and imposing villain lineups. There are a few janky animation hiccups along the way, like how the camera pans up to the top of the Sakura Capital Castle twice in a row, when the villain montage could have just as easily transitioned straight into Orochi's big evil Sakuga moment, but for the most part, this OP is characterized by a fluid feeling of flow from start to finish. Building up from Luffy struggling against his sea stone cuffs through a cutaway that shows what his friends are up to and how he got in that predicament, and into the moment where he makes his jailbreak and starts throwing comically oversized hands at Kaido. And not only is the final clash this all leads into jaw-dropping to look at, but unlike the Animal Kingdom fight in We Can, it actually foreshadows a lot of small things about the upcoming battle in Onigashima, which indicates that Oda might be communicating more of his future plans to the anime staff these days. 13th place goes to another OP that's unified by virtue of its overall vibe, Kokoro no Chizu by Boy Style. Sorry, at Nine Claw Tiger, I guess you're gonna have to do that riot now. This is the first of One Piece's openings to use a widescreen format, and it takes full advantage of the expanded frame to pack an abundance of Straw Hat personality into the gorgeous falling shot that introduces all of them. After that, we're introduced to a slick animated motion graphic of the title coming together, behind which you'll see what was once a cutting-edge 3D model of the merry-go. That model also appeared in the fourth OP, but here it's the central focus, which does have its downsides. While the water around the ship and the cloth physics on its sails and flags look pretty good, other parts of it, like its masthead, look pretty not. I do think Bon Voyage had the right idea in making that hand drawn, but on the other hand, the compositing of the 2D Straw Hats onto and in front of that slightly janky 3D model is impressive even by modern anime standards, and the 3D effects allow this OP to convey the feeling of an ocean of possibilities stretching out all around you better than any opening to come before it, and many to come after. This is one of the series' simpler and quieter calls to adventure, but it's a compelling one nonetheless. Aesthetics and vibes are all well and good, but in my book, the best way to tie an OP together is with some sort of emotional through line. And taking 12th place, Hope by Namie Amuro does exactly that through its focus on Sanji and the crew's efforts to recover him from Whole Cake Island. Without that framing device, a lot of this OP does come off as janky and generic by series standards, but with it, those cliched parts are reframed as reminders of what makes this crew so lovable at their core, raising the stakes both in terms of what Sanji stands to lose and what stands in the way of him getting it back. There are parts of this OP that leave a lot to be desired, like redundant shots of Big Mom looming ominously and a general overabundance of still frames, but Whole Cake Island and Sanji's role on it represents some of the strongest emotional storytelling in this entire series, and when he emerges at last from the darkness to greet his friends with specifically that picnic basket, it hits like a goddamn Gum King Kong gun. That one shot is enough to shoot this otherwise mid-OP halfway up this list. It's that low-key iconic. Meanwhile, in both 11th and 10th places, we've got an intro so high-key iconic, they used it twice. In the same way that Cha-La Head Cha-La eternally encompasses all things Dragon Ball, Hiroshi Kitadani's We Are is and forever will be One Piece. That feeling of freedom and excitement, the constant sense of forward momentum, the fluid fight sequence, complete with sound effects that's still the Goldie standard for One Piece OP action. And then, of course, there's the song itself, calling on us to pack up all our dreams, come be Luffy's friend, and go on an adventure. Everything at the core of what One Piece would eventually grow to be is here in some small sense. Even the vast, overwhelming scale of the world beyond the Straw Hats' deck, as symbolized by the Neptunians who swim alongside them as they sail toward something or other out on the horizon that fills Luffy's face with joy, which could even be deep foreshadowing for the moment they reach One Piece itself. But regardless of any meaning that might be hidden within it, this opening carries 2 decades of nostalgia in its melody and visuals, and the anime's creators have called back to it many a time in the form of insert songs. There's also, of course, the Straw Hat remix that served as the anime's 7th OP for a brief 5-episode stretch, which proves just how well-rounded and versatile We Are's visuals really are, and technically qualifies that version for its own spot on this list. I've chosen to rank that ahead of the original in 10th place, since it's irresistibly charming to hear the whole Straw Hat crew singing along to this unforgettable tune, but honestly, either one's as good as the other. Hiroshi Kitadani's We Go is a very transparent attempt to create a similarly memorable and well-rounded introduction to the post-time skip side of One Piece's world. An attempt that I believe succeeds, as indicated by my decision to place it 9th ahead of We Are. It's an intro that starts out soaring, both audibly and visually, as the first shot after the narrator spiel and our intro to Luffy is a glorious double coup de burst. And it just keeps on escalating from there, with exceptionally stylish black, white, and fabric print character cards for all 9 Straw Hats, leading into a kinetic lineup shot straight out of Quentin Tarantino's Wet Dreams, which is then followed by a pitched battle with an entire naval fleet that kicks off with a different kind of fetish Sakuga. Where the Straw Hats once ran away from the Navy at every turn, now they charge bravely toward it, and thanks to all the training he and his friends have done in the 2 years they spent apart, Luffy can now sink a battleship with a single blow. After the action, We Go concludes by inserting Roger into the chain of Straw Hat handoffs that connects Luffy and Shanks, then plopping the whole crew down on that cliff ya boys been sprinting toward for the last 15 years. By adding only these most essential expository embellishments to the foundation laid by We Are, this OP manages to mark an equally iconic new starting point for the next leg of this grand journey. And in 8th place, we find the point at which that journey ends. For now, at least. OP23, Dreamin On by Da Ice, features oodles of foreshadowing packed into some of the most impressive bits of fight Sakuga in these OPs to date. Sanji and Zoro even make beating up random thugs look awesome here. Though, of course, the main event is still the throwdown between Luffy and Kaido, which now features hockey flashes the likes of which we've never seen before. Which, if Oda has been sharing plans with the animation staff, may even hint at stuff the manga hasn't gotten to yet. While it doesn't quite match the strong narrative flow of Over the Top, Dreamin' On does have a ton of individual shots that I love to pieces, like the shot of Luffy, Traffy, and Kid all fighting over center frame, just as they argue over who gets to take down Kaido. I adore everything about the Odin flashback sequence too, especially Baby Buggy, but I'm equally enamored with the Toby Roppo hype reel that replaces it in the 3rd version of the OP, especially since that leads into our first glimpse of Best Boy Yamato. It is a bit on the chaotic side, but that's perfectly fitting for this particular arc, and it's particularly fitting that this OP starts with all the Straw Hats lined up facing off against Kaido, because it marks the first time in literally years that they've all been together in the same place. Coincidentally, in 7th place, Hands Up, the 16th OP by Kota Shinzato, marks the last time they were all together before that, all the way back on Punk Hazard, which in this opening serves as the backdrop and hazmat-suited goon supplier to one of the best fight posing sequences in any of these openings. Leading into that, we get to watch this gorgeously detailed picture of the Straw Hats picnicking get inked, colored in, and animated, followed by a cute little montage where the crew shows off all their non-combative talents, including Nami working on some charts and Chopper actually doing some doctoring for once. Hands Up is a celebration of these characters and their enduring friendship, the way that Luffy pulled them all together from around the world. Once again, it goes for a coup de burst climax, but this time into a sunset, cut together with animated renditions of some of Oda's best full crew color spreads, in a manner that explicitly says, together, we can go anywhere and do anything. And all of that would be heartwarming enough normally, but whether or not they planned it this way, it is damn near perfect as the lead-in to the longest time, in real time, that this crew has ever been split up. On the subject of character-driven feels, I'm giving 6th place to the 6th OP, Brand New World by D51, in part for how its last scenes capture one of the most powerful Straw Hats assemble moments in the entire pre-time skip series, when the crew finally reaches Robin atop Eni's lobby. As animation goes, it's not much more than a few static yet dramatic faces staring back at each other, but all the raw emotion of that moment carries through in the OP. The only way this sequence could have a better conclusion, in my eyes, is if the final shot of their flag was replaced with a burning world government one. And while the more impressively animated OP original story that leads into these clips isn't specifically about Robin, it still works surprisingly well as a setup for this. It's another slice-of-lifey type deal, where the Straw Hats sail around a bit, find an island to camp out on, and then get chased off it by the Navy. Fairly standard stuff in these OPs, save for some exceptionally flavorful animation, but here it also works to establish the warm dynamics of the crew and Robin's place within it, which lends a lot of weight to their efforts to get her back. And at the same time, their willingness to fight the same force that we just saw them fleeing highlights just how much they're willing to risk for her. Now, I can't quite work out how the animated color spreads at the very start of this OP fit into its grander narrative, but I am particularly fond of that horse race one, so I'll give them a pass for being a bit random. Now, breaking us into the bottom of the top 5 comes an OP with animated spreads that are both far more animated and serve a much clearer purpose. Kaze O Sagashite, sung by Yaguchi Mari and the Straw Hats themselves, whose synchronized vocals serve the same purpose as those cover scenes, showing us that no matter what they get up to or how far they go, this crew will always be together in spirit, which is especially important in this moment because, not unlike Hands Up, it marks the beginning of their longest time apart, this time in narrative time. Okay, technically Share the World was the start of the Great Straw Hat separation, but Kaze O Sagashite is actually about it. Like many of One Piece's openings, it tells a slice-of-lifey story about the Straw Hats hanging out in its first half, but this one's framed explicitly as a pleasant dream, with Luffy waking up to find his friends doing some crazy nonsense straight out of the Animal Theater covers on what turns out to be the back of a giant turtle, which Luffy then flees on a giant seagull. It's all quite surreal and relaxing, standing in stark contrast to the OP's back half, which is spent building up to the Impel Down breakout and battle at Marineford. There's a lot of gorgeous and creative animation in this section as well, but my favorite bit comes right at the end, when Luffy drops out of the sky, accompanied not by his crew, but a ragtag squad of random prison escapees, in a conclusion that underscores the desperation of leaving those precious friends behind so he can rush to save his family. Those feelings come together even stronger in our 4th place finisher, Fight Together by Namie Amuro, which serves as the series' 14th intro. When I complained at the top of this list that so much more could have been done with the brotherly feels and Straw Hat separation anxiety than what we see in OP 13, this right here is what I was talking about. Instead of generic sad anime walking, this OP frames itself around the powerful One Piece specific symbols of Thousand Sunny waiting for us in port at Sabaody and Luffy's hat waiting for him on the rocks at Ruskaina. And rather than just chilling alone in their room, we actually get to see the Straw Hats do some training in the various parts of the Grand Line to which they've been scattered. The flashbacks to Luffy and Ace's childhood are likewise fleshed out considerably with new info from the manga that makes them hit way harder. Even the clip show part of the OP is creatively emotional, stitching together multiple shots of the moment each Straw Hat truly joined the crew to create animated collages reminiscent of Oda's own page compositions. And it all leads up to a real tearjerker of an ending that perfectly reflects the complicated mix of feelings these final Paradise chapters evoke. As a culmination of everything One Piece has been building up to this point, you really can't ask for much better. Speaking of evoking things, at number 3, the third OP, Hikaru E by the Baby Stars, does an infinitely better job than Believe of referencing that iconic Madhouse Treasure Island OP. The whole narrator segment is animated in the same old-timey illustrated style, showing the merry-go encircling a whole gorgeously illustrated planet to reach a new dawn. And between that crosshatchy goodness and the manga-style marker-colored portraits of the cast that follow, this might be the closest the animes come to accurately translating the feel of Oda's art from page to screen. Out of all these openings, I think Hikaru E is the most effective and complete encapsulation of One Piece's essential elements, even more so than the original We Are. Its connected action shot of the whole crew, now featuring Chopper and Robin, manages to be even better than We Are's at capturing their unique personalities and abilities. And while the 2.5D camera work of that action doesn't impress quite so much against a blue-white void as it does on the harder-to-draw deck of the Mary, they make up for that after the title card with a full 3D rotation around the entire ship as she sails across the sea, which must have been a pain to put together since this was the last of these OPs to be made entirely with traditional cell animation. Once we're down on deck, we get to see the Straw Hats sailing through stormy seas into a clear new dawn and past a school of giant dolphins that nearly capsizes them. Fun little moments that combine to convey a sense of the chaotic fun these wacky cartoon pirates have every day they travel together through this wacky cartoon world. Hikaru E is nothing more and nothing less than an irresistibly enticing invitation to adventure. Of course, there is more to One Piece than the base appeal of pirate adventure-y fun, namely the metric ton of emotional weight that it's piled on over the decades of its run. And toward the end of its first decade, for its 10th OP, the animators at Toei managed to condense all of those feelings into a glorious 2 minutes and 30 seconds, backed by TVXQ's catchy K-pop remix of We Are. To be honest, I didn't think much of this OP at first glance. The remix itself is an acquired taste, and while the seagull animation that kicks it off is slick as heck, the beach walk cycles of the Straw Hats that follow are a little on the stiff and janky side. It all struck me as sloppy and rushed, but then the crew started rushing, and kept rushing for a good 10 seconds, past all 55 of the friendly faces they've met so far, and when that was followed with a callback to the 3-villain Flash from the original OP, only with 10 villains and twice as many musical notes this time, I realized they were doing something kinda special here. Then I got to the Alabasta Fists, followed by a tearful Vivi and Karu reflected in the eye of Going Mary as she sails off into her last sunset, and I began weeping uncontrollably. Because I miss them so fucking much in a way that only those 450 plus chapters deep into this world could possibly understand. Before the tears have even dried, we kude burst forward into new, equally emotional adventures. Brook is introduced brilliantly on the reprisal of You Wanna Be My Friend, impending threats and important current events alike flash across the screen. Then it all concludes with the single best Shanks shot in 22 years of Shanks shots. But even without any of that, just the emotional atom bomb pairing of the iconic One Piece goodbye with the nostalgic One Piece song would elevate this OP to the level of high art. Still, there is one One Piece opening that's even high-artier. One with perfect visuals, perfect lyrics, a perfect singer, perfect everything. I am referring, of course, to the theme of the one, the only, Soge King, as crooned by his buddy Usopp, who's definitely not the same person as him. Unlike Superpowers, this OP actually commits to the common Sentai bit with a gloriously cheesy title card, empty quarries full of rainbow smoke aplenty, and even a sniper-themed spoof of the iconic Toei logo that precedes all of their live-action tokusatsu fare. And it's far more than just a meta joke. Its cheesy retro tone also works in narrative to convey the precise, self-aggrandizing yet earnestly well-intentioned nature of the lie, I mean truth, that Usoge King is telling us here, which feels closer and closer to the actual truth each time they bring it back as an insert song. Okay, jokes aside, obviously I think We Are 2008 is the actual #1 One Piece OP, but I do love it when shows use the musical texture of their openings, even if they're fake, to add to their stories, and I just couldn't let the video wrap without acknowledging this particularly delightful instance of that. With all that said, I'm sure that folks will disagree with literally every single pick on this list except that objectively correct last one, and thus I'd love to know in the comments below which of the OPOPs is your favorite and why. While I've got you here, if you're a big One Piece fan, you might enjoy my video about the series' world building. And if you're not a fan yet, I'd encourage you to listen to my dire warning about how reading One Piece will ruin your life. Seriously, do not do it. I'm Geoff Thew, professional shitbag, signing out from my mother's basement.